So today's topic we're going to talk about is why your book title shouldn't be a mystery. I've had a lot of clients who I've talked to about this because we write their book and they say, "Okay, now it's like, it's time for the title," and they come up with this name, and I'm like, "What? What does that mean?" And people think like erroneously, "Oh, well, it's going to be a mystery," and people will be like, "Oh, what's that?" And then they're going to click on it and they're going to want to find out more. Nothing can be farther from the truth, my friend. Like, honestly, like, I mean, think about it, right? If I was shopping on Amazon and I saw something and I had no idea what it was for, would I click on it? Absolutely not. I wouldn't. Why wouldn't I click on something that I didn't know what it was for? Because if I'm shopping, especially if I'm shopping for a specific item, like the other day, I was shopping for Yellow Jacket the Killer because if you can see behind me, there's some yellow jackets on my property. Um, and I came across some product and I didn't know it was Yellow Jacket Killer. I wouldn't have clicked on it. So you can't make your book title something that is quote unquote mysterious because it's not really mysterious for your reader. And it's not helping your marketing. So you want to always pick a title that explains what your book is about, right? Or is in the category of what your book is about. So, for example, my first book I published, I have a podcast called Travel Gluten Free, and I was publishing a book that talked about how to, like, it made a big compilation of all the basics, right, of how to travel gluten free. So I called it The Guide to Traveling Gluten Free. You clearly know who it's for and what it's about. Another book that I recently published is called Sensible Senior Solutions. So it's about seniors, but then the subtitle explains it more, and I'm blanking my own subtitle right now. But basically, it's a book. The first half talks about all the different types of like options for senior care, and then the second half of the book talks about all of the different ways you can pay for it. And then, so you need to make your book title descriptive. You need to make sure that whatever your book title is, anybody coming across your book title knows if it is for them or if it's not for them, right? Because we don't want people buying our books and they expect to see one thing in it. And then when they read it, it's something different because I have seen several books on Amazon because I go on Amazon to do research for my clients. And I looked at the book title and I thought, oh, this is an interesting book. And I click on the book title and I see it has low reviews. I'm like, I wonder why. I never just look at the numbers. I always like to read through the reviews. And typically what I like to do is read through the really high number reviews, like the fives, and the low number reviews, the ones, because then I can get a good idea of what they did really great and what they need to work on. And so in the one review and the 2 stars, the people reviewed this author's book and they said, wow, that when I read the title and the subtitle, I thought I was getting this. But when I read the book, it didn't talk about that. It talked about this, or it was like it talked about that, but it was only like touched on that, and it didn't really go into that in the book. So this is what I was expecting based on the book title, and I didn't get that when I read the book. So that's really important that in order to make sure you have a good book title, not only is it descriptive of like your topic, but it's going to tell the reader what's inside, right? And then it's accurate because we want to make sure that the reader understands or the potential reader understands when they're shopping at a bookstore or Amazon or wherever they're shopping that when they're reading that book title, they know what they're getting into. Or when they're reading your book description, they know what your book is about, maybe why you wrote it, who it's for, and what topics you covered in your book. So that's really important. So to have that description, but to also have a really, really good book title. So you want your book title, yes, to be on topic, to be descriptive, but you also want it to be catchy, right? You want it to be like, oh, that sounds interesting. So there's a difference between sounding interesting and being quote unquote mysterious. We don't want to be mysterious. We want to be interesting with a book that hooks. So that's one of the really important things to know about book titles. And when you're writing your description, it's really important to make sure that you have, information from each chapter. Now, that doesn't mean you have to copy and paste information from each chapter. But what I mean by that is if you have like 15 chapters in your book, make sure in your description of your book that you have those covered somewhere in that book summary that you're using for your description, because then the reader understands a much better information on how they can, what they're going to expect, and really more detailed information about your book. Hello, Sayani. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. So put your comment or put your questions about writing, editing, or publishing in the comments below because this isn't Ask Me Anything, and I'd love to answer any of your questions that you have. It can be a really small question, it can be a big question. We have enough time to answer a big question right now, and I love answering any type of questions on writing and publishing. So I'm going to tell you a little story about recently with a client that I had. And so that you don't make this mistake with your book title. So we were looking at book titles. And another aspect of book titles is you want to always do your research on Amazon first before you pick your book title. So another client I had, we were looking at book titles and he settled on this one. And then he did not check on Amazon to see if anybody else had that same book title. And we found out that other people did have part of, not the entire book title, but part of the same book title because it had a common phrase in it. However, he really lucked out because the other people who had that similar book title were they were both all nonfiction, but they were in a completely different genre. So luckily, no one would have mixed up his book with the other books. Plus, his book had a unique cover that no one else could have had because it had a picture of himself on it from like decades ago. So that was also really good. So you want to make sure that your book title isn't repetitive with other books. And I always tell people just go on Amazon is the easiest way to research anything on books because you have a large representation of the published books that are out there because 80% of people buy their books on Amazon and a lot of people shop on Amazon for books. So many publishers and many self-published authors publish books on Amazon in addition to like libraries and bookstores and other places that you can publish a book. So another thing about book titles is that you want to make sure that you are writing a title that it like appeals to your vertical. So specifically, like if you're in marketing, make sure you're writing a title that's going to appeal to people in marketing. Or if you are into like environmental causes, make sure you're writing a title that's going to appeal to people in environmental causes because you want to make sure that you are attracting the right people to your title. In addition to just having the right title and the right description as well. All right, my friends, make sure you put your questions for Ask Me Anything in the chat. I would love to answer them. Another question I commonly get about titles is like, when should I pick my title? Because a lot of people believe you should pick your title like when you start writing your book, and you really don't have to. But you do absolutely have to have your title right before you are going to format your book. Because right before you're going to format your book, you need a title page. And in order to have a title page, you obviously need a title. So what I always suggest to my clients is to just have a title page like document, whether that's a Google Doc or Word doc or whatever, and you write down there, like as you're going along writing your book, titles you think would be interesting for your book. Maybe you can have a column. I've also had done this with clients. They had a column of like current book titles in their genre, so they know like what titles not to pick. And then on the other column, they have like their ideas for their titles that they want for their book. You can also go on Amazon and compare titles to see like what you like better. So like what types of titles do you like better? Do you like the kind of like, oh my gosh, scare you in action title? Do you like the like just really eye-catching title? Like what kinds of titles do you like the best? Another really great way to look up information on titles is by using Publisher Rocket. This is a Kindle Dave Chesney product, and it's really great. It's a software product, and he originally developed it because he originally developed Publisher Rocket because he was aggregating all the information on Amazon on a real-time spreadsheet. And while that was good for data, it was really hard to reproduce because he had to always put the numbers in. So he created software, which when you go on to Publisher Rocket, you can see, you can put in, you can search keywords, you can search categories. You can also help with getting runs on Amazon ads with the Kindlepreneur or with the Publisher Rocket as well. It's a really, really, really fabulous tool. And I recommend that my clients get it if they're going to publish, especially if they're going to publish more than one book. But you can get it even if you're publishing one book. But it's really definitely worth the investment if you're publishing more than one book because you can get your keywords for your Amazon search on there because keywords for ebooks and keywords for paperback books can be slightly different. which is really strange, but that's how it works. I'm not questioning the system. I just know how to use it. So just note that. And also too, it's really great for if you are writing a book, you can actually go into Publisher Rocket and see like all the titles of the books in your genre so that you know what titles are there and what titles are selling well, because it also shows you on there like the number of sales and the number of sales in that genre. So it's really, really, really amazing data and information to help you use that so that you can pick the correct title for your genre and your vertical so that you're not stuck with a title that might be repetitive of someone else's title or might be similar, because you definitely don't want a similar title, especially if it's in the same exact genre. So if you have any questions for Ask Me Anything, make sure that you put them in the question box below. I'd love to hear them because we only have a few more minutes and I'd love to answer any of your questions that you have. So on Publisher Rocket, just a little more expansion on that, is that it used to be a one-time purchase and now they are moving it to a monthly subscription. I don't know what the cost is yet. I just found out about this recently, but even with the monthly subscription, I'm definitely still going to get it because it is such a useful tool for me professionally and personally, because I have published 4 books on my own. And just to tell you kind of a little bit about my story is that I originally did not plan on becoming an author. Like it was not a dream for me. Like I never sat there and said, "Wow, I really want to become an author when I grow up." That was not even on my radar in high school or college or anything. But I started my podcast and Travel Gluten Free. And as I was doing my podcast, well, let me back up a little bit. I originally started my podcast because I found out I was celiac a little over a decade ago. And right after I found out, I did this very long road trip on the Pacific Coast Highway. If you don't know what that is, it is a Route 1 basically that runs all the way from the bottom of Southern California all the way to northwest end of Washington. It's I don't know, like 3,000 miles long, 3,200 miles long. So I wanted to road trip that. And I did it. I wanted to do it in like a couple weeks one summer. So I planned it all out. And I had just gotten my celiac diagnosis, like I think 3 months before that trip. So I'm on the trip and I'm at a gas station and I realize like, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared to like be gluten free and do a road trip on my own because I didn't have anyone else with me. And I was like, okay, when I get home, I'm gonna find like some resources on this because this is really hard to navigate. And I found out there really weren't any good resources on traveling gluten free. There were like some like, oh, here's 50 restaurants in New York City, but that only helps you if you go to New York City and eating at restaurants all the time. So I decided to, with my podcast, start my podcast Travel Gluten Free to help people that are gluten free that need to travel. So like I teach people how to pack for an airplane trip, how to road trip, how to cruise, like what to do on a cruise when you're gluten free or have food allergies. So not only is it good for food allergies, but it's good for anybody, or excuse me, not good for just people who are celiac, but anybody who has food allergies, because all of the things for celiac disease and eating gluten free when you have celiac also apply towards people who have food allergies. So I made my podcast and then realized I had so much information from my podcast, I could easily turn it into a book. So that's what I ended up doing. I took my podcast and ended up turning it into the Guide to Traveling Gluten Free. And I do have a second edition of a rough draft done, but it's a couple years old already. So I actually need to finish that. I'm going to probably publish that next spring as a new book for the second edition. So I'm really excited about that as well. But yeah, so that's a little bit of my own author story. I would love to hear yours. And I'd love to have any of your questions you have about book titles. You can leave them in the chat if you see this video after it, or if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me directly in the Substack chat or in the YouTube comments below. I would love to hear from you. Another place you can reach out to me is right on my website in my contact form, and that's www.writeforyou.me. One last thing, I would love to invite you guys to, I'm doing a virtual writing retreat, and this is a free one. So the first one I'm offering is free. It's for anyone that is writing a book, but you don't write for a living. I mean, if you write for a living, you can still come, that's fine. But it's really geared towards people who don't write for a living. So it's going to be a really fun 1-day virtual retreat, free from the comfort of your home. So if you want to wear pajamas, I might even make it a pajama party. That would actually be super cool. We could have a pajama party virtual writing retreat. Pajamas are encouraged, bring your favorite beverage, whether that's coffee, tea, hot chocolate, whatever that is. And we are going to write. Now, it's not just going to be writing all day because, that would be cool, but it would kind of be boring. So we're going to break it up a little bit. In the very beginning, we're going to do introductions. I'm going to do a little bit of a workshop on a Q&A workshop after lunch, and we're going to do a networking lunch as well. So you'll get a writing retreat with blocks of times. We're just going to turn off our audio and write, and then we're going to do a Q&A where you get to ask me anything about your book that you are writing that day, and also a networking lunch so that you can meet other professionals who are also on their journey of writing the book and get support and meet new people who hopefully you have a connection with. So I hope you will join me. It's going to be September 19th, right from your computer. It's going to be, I am on Pacific time since I'm right outside Portland, Oregon. So my virtual meetup is going to be from 8 a.m. Pacific to 3 p.m. Pacific, which starts at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, or 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Well, I got all 4 time zones right, and it's this early in the morning. Okay, my friends, I hope you're having a wonderful start to your week. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's live. I really enjoyed having you here. And I will see you next week on another Substack Live. Bye.